Welcome to SVGTV's news for Thursday, July the 16th, 2020. I am Bob Norther with the details. 3 boys with an average of 97.8% tied for the top spots in this year's Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment, the CPEA. The preliminary results were released by the Ministry of Education this afternoon. The 3 top performers are Kai Francis of the Kingston Proprietary School, Johnny Neverson of the Windsor Primary School, and Matthew Wilson of the St. Mary's Roman Catholic School. St. Mary's RC took 6 of the positions in the top 10, while 3 went to Kingston Proprietary and 1 to Windsor Primary. In the external assessment, Matthew Wilson and Najee Lewis of St. Mary's RC scored the highest mathematics, 100%. The highest grade in language, 98.67%, with a tie between the top performers, Johnny Neverson of the Windsor Primary and his schoolmate, Isabella Sam. Cristiano Fitzpatrick of the St. Mary's RC took the top position in social studies with a perfect grade, 100%. The preliminary results indicate that the proportions of students who met the prescribed standard was 1,650, was 86.16%, a slight decrease over last year's 87.19%. This number includes 780, 81.33% males, and 870, 91% females. 50 of the 68 schools recorded a pass rate in excess of 80%. Of the 1,920 students registered, 1,915 wrote the final examination on Friday, June 26, later than usual because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Students' final scores were derived from the aggregate scores of both components of the CPEA. This is the external assessment, which consisted of multiple choice tests in mathematics, science, language arts, and social studies, and from a school-based assessment, which comprised of a project, a writing portfolio, a book report, as well as teachers' tests, pupil-made tests, and can-do skills exercises in mathematics, science, language arts, and social studies. The school-based assessment accounted for 200 marks, or 40% of the total score, while the examination assessment was 300 marks, or 60% of the total score. The criteria for deriving the required standard is a student must acquire at least 50% of the possible 500 marks. Chief Education Officer Elizabeth Walker, on behalf of the Ministry of Education, congratulates all students and extends gratitude to the head teachers, and staff of all schools for their support of these students. For the first half of 2020, there has been reportedly a 0.1% decrease, or just under $1 million EC in revenue loss when compared to the same period in 2010. So says Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, who said the country has done well despite the fall in revenue for the past 3 months due to the impact of COVID-19. For June, he said revenue fell by 8%, an improvement from the previous month, which recorded a 20% decrease. Prime Minister Gonsalves, however, admits there are challenging times ahead as they continue to see an increase in expenditure and a fall in revenue.
The thing is that our expenditure, because we're spending more money and all the things which we spend in, our expenditure has gone up by 12%. The recurrent expenditure went up by 4%, and capital expenditure went up by about 160%. What it shows is that we're holding it together, but real challenges are ahead. Because last month was 20% drop, 8% drop, May 20%. We'd have to see what July, I don't know what the extent of the interest levy payments would be, which is a significant one which we would collect in July.
PM Gonsalves says they are also working towards managing the accounts deficit, which has doubled for the first half of the year.
The current account deficit has doubled from $12 million at this time last year, the end of June, to $24 million. So, and we have to fund that deficit otherwise. But it's the time of COVID, and we can't leave people stranded.
And Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves is cautioning some public servants, whom he said are charging as much as $500 EC for a business plan for persons seeking funding under the government's PRIME program. Speaking on radio yesterday, PM Gonzalez said this is not the policy of the government and such practice must stop.
Mine came and told me that. I said, no, you misunderstand. That is not so. I said, man, don't tell me things. And my constituent say, but comrade, look, I have the name of the person they send me here, and they write down the $500, and I see the handwriting. So those who are doing it, I'm saying to them, stop it. And I'm telling everybody, that can't happen. And anybody tells you that here is the name of some man or woman who will help you with the business plan, but you got to pay them $500. Tell them that I say. Tell them that Ralph say that they're talking foolishness.
He said that complaints were received about public servants at the Ministry of Agriculture who are making it difficult for farmers to receive fertilizers at half price. He said that it is a simple process that farmers have to go through and gave a stern warning to those whom he said are disrupting the smooth process.
Even though a whole complicated process, some of them want to do. That's not the policy. That's not the policy. And any public servant who try to run you through that ring, just tell me. Come and leave a note. I can't see everybody. I'm not going to stand by for any public servant at whatever level they may be to make it difficult for people to get the benefits which the cabinet and the parliament of this country have determined that they should get.
Another concern raised by the Prime Minister is the public servants with Social Services Department, whom he said has not been accommodating to persons seeking government's help. He said these public servants should ask for a transfer if they are not people-oriented.
If you do not love poor people, ask for a transfer somewhere else in the public service. Because if you're working at social development, you have to have a sensitivity to the poor, to persons who are in need. And if you're having a little difficulty, please read the 25th chapter of the book of Matthew. It's well laid out there, you know. But you can't get, if even sometimes you get frustrated, you can't let the frustration spill over and make people feel humiliated, make people feel unwanted.
Be patient. This is the advice from Minister of Finance and Area Representative for East St. George, Camila Gonzalez, to persons who are awaiting approval for prime grants or building materials. Speaking on Star FM Radio last evening, Minister Gonzalez said that due to an increase in the number of persons applying for prime grants, it takes a longer time to process the applications.
Of time between application and grant is a lot longer for prime than it would be for the guy or the lady who is a vendor or who is a minibus operator or something like that. And remember, even though right now I'm bragging about 400 people who have prime and prime plus grants, it's over 3,500 people who have applied. So you're talking so far that 10-11% of the people who have applied for prime grants have something in their hand right now. It does not mean, I want to repeat it, it does not mean that if you have not received something yet, that you will not receive something.
Gonzalez says similarly with the distribution of building materials, persons have raised the issue of the length of time it takes to get their application processed. He urged them to remain patient.
I put in my application since 3 months ago and somebody else get and I ain't get yet. So I don't understand things. Maybe you don't know when the other person applied. Maybe what they applied for is less than what you applied. Maybe the assessor went out and assessed their property because it was next to another property that they were already assessing. So there are a lot of variables there. Similarly in prime. And what I want to caution everybody about is, because you haven't gotten yet from prime, or because you haven't gotten yet in building materials, don't start to see Jumbie where there's no Jumbie. Don't start to think that they are. Hold on. Let me finish. Don't think that there's something nefarious going on.
And Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves continues to call for reparatory justice for indigenous people and enslaved Africans. He was a panelist at a recent virtual discussion hosted by a coalition of regional organizations. The coalition included the Caribbean Peace Movement, the Christian Workers Union of Belize, the Caribbean Movement for Peace and Integration, the 13th of June 1980 Movement, Jamaica Peace Council, the Global African Congress, and other civil society groups. PM Gonsalves spoke on the topic, the case for reparation for African and indigenous peoples of the Americas, a grassroots perspective. In his presentation, PM Gonsalves said that the case for reparation justice is unanswerably strong and insists that the struggle for reparation one must not be sidetracked by helplessness.
I assert further that the struggle for reparations is a great cause, and great causes have never been won by doubtful men and women. We must not be doubtful about it. And I insist that in this struggle for reparations, we must not be sidetracked by sideshows or by a debilitating learned helplessness. We know many people with all different kinds of agendas, personal and otherwise, will take us into sideshows. We have to stick to the main event. And we can't tolerate persons just engaged in lamentations and giving us a lot of, teaching us things which induce helplessness. We can't do that. We have to be very positive of what we are doing.
Prime Minister Gonsalves, who recently took up the position of chair of CARICOM, said reparatory justice is part of his agenda. During his chairmanship, and the work will be done at a Prime Ministerial Subcommittee of CARICOM, headed by Barbados Prime Minister Mia Motley.
The same way that moral suasion was not enough to bring about the abolition of the slave trade and slavery, as Eric Williams so skillfully pointed out, well researched in Capitalism and Slavery, so too moral suasion is not going to be enough for us, but it is important to have it. And we have to see the context in which we are functioning, and we have to organize accordingly with our agenda, as I have said. I'm now the chairman. This is the first time I'm the chairman since that time. And part of my work as the chairman of CARICOM, in addition to all the extant challenges which we have with COVID and the fallout from neoliberalism, all of these challenges, climate change and the like, this is on my agenda during the chairmanship of CARICOM.
Embattled prison officer Kenson King of Park Hill appeared before the Kingston Magistrates Court today, charged for maliciously wounding a prisoner on the 27th of June 2020. King was placed on $2,000 bail and is expected to return to court in October. The 33-year-old King was arrested and charged by the police on Wednesday, almost 3 weeks after the incident. In a press release, the police stated that according to investigations, the defendant allegedly unlawfully and maliciously wounded prisoner Dorian Mapp at Her Majesty's Prison. The 23-year-old prisoner allegedly received a box to the right eye and beaten about his body at the hands of King. King's lawyer, Joma Thomas, said that he found it quite unusual how the procedures of the arrest and subsequent charge against his client were followed.
It's the first time that I have known of a situation where an allegation is made against a prison officer and the Commissioner of Police, prisoner officer engaging in an action against an inmate, and the police high command initiates investigation that leads to the arrest of the prison officer.
Thomas said what he is aware of is that the police do not have complete jurisdiction over prisoners, noting that there is a Prison Act and a Police Act that speaks to such matters, including the incident involving his client. Thomas explained the usual process used in dealing with matters with someone in the public service.
What normally happens is if there's an allegation that is made against somebody in the public service of whom a prison officer is one, the permanent secretary in that ministry, which would be the Ministry of National Security, could initiate a process which may lead to the interdiction of that person. And if the permanent secretary is of the view the allegation necessitates further action, particularly criminal action, the PS in the Ministry of National Security would forward whatever information she has to the Director of Public Prosecution. And the Director of Public Prosecution is the party who can initiate and end any criminal action in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Thomas said he made his own inquiries from prison officers on the charge in procedures, which they agree has never happened before.
In fact, I have spoken to a number of prison officers who have long-standing experience working in the prison, and all of them to a man said, this is the first time that what happened as it relates to Mr. King has happened to their knowledge. So there's this statement from the Commissioner of Police that they don't have to wait and that the police have done this before. We don't know when that might have happened. But I guess the Commissioner of Police, his pay grade is much higher than mine, so he may have this information that I don't know.
In May of this year, the prison officer was detained for over 36 hours without charge over a post he allegedly made on Facebook, and whom Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves reportedly later threatened with a defamation lawsuit. It was later reported that lawyers for Gonsalves, citing the Facebook post, had written King, demanded that he donates half of his 1 month's salary to the Zero Hunger Trust Fund, or be sued for defaming the Prime Minister. In other news, Fabian Williams, a 40-year-old self-employed of 20 Hill, was arrested and charged with the offense of wounding. The police say according to investigation, the defendant allegedly assaulted Dorian De Freitas, a 31-year-old trafficker of Redemption Shops, by striking him on the right side of his face with a piece of brick, causing actual bodily harm. The incident occurred at 20 Hill, Vermont on June 21st. The accused was expected to appear before the magistrate court to answer to the charge. And 2 men have been charged with the murder of Dwayne Seaton, a 40-year-old farmer of Grenada, Edinburgh, Ovia, which occurred at Belen Mountain between July 6th and 9th. The accused are 25-year-old Leswood King of Choppins and 26-year-old Caldo McMaster of Harmony Hall. They were expected to appear before the Serious Offences Court today for arraignment.